Okay, today is June 10th, 1986, and this
Is
is...
this the 10th?
Yes, sir. And this is Joe Todd, and interview with Mr. Wes Bullock in Miami, Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's where I live.
Mr. Bullock, where were you born?
Born in Montezuma, Missouri. It's Montevello. Little country town up 20 miles east of Nevada.
When is your birthday?
4th day of October,
What year?
93.
93. Who is your father?
Charlie Bullock,
Charlie Bullock. And your mother?
Jesse,
What was her maiden name?
Hathaway.
Hathaway. Do you recall if either one of your grandfathers or your father was in the Civil War?
They were both in it.
They were? Did you know your grandparents, your grandfathers?
Oh yes, I knew them both.
Mm-hmm. What were their names?
Homer Hathaway and Charles Wesley Bullock.
Did they ever tell you any stories about the Civil War?
My Hathaway used to.
Do you recall any stories they used to tell you about the war?
Not vividly, I don't. But he talks about it all the time.
Which side did they fight on?
They were both Union.
Both Union. Mm-hmm. What kind of work did your father do?
He's a blacksmith.
Blacksmith. Did you help him?
Normal County. Huh?
Did you help him run the blacksmith shop?
Yes, I helped him.
What did you do run the blacksmith shop?
Huh?
What did you do run the blacksmith shop?
I never run one.
Mm-hmm.
Now I used to run one around the mines.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do repair work around the mills.
Mm-hmm. As a small boy, what chores did you do around the house?
What is that?
What chores did you do around the house or the blacksmith shop? As a small boy, what'd you do?
Oh, I helped my dad when he'd be working on wagons and one thing and another.
What'd you do to help your father?
Just whatever there was to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a general helper.
How did the blacksmith tighten the tires on the wheels?
Huh?
How does the blacksmith tighten the tires on the wheels?
He heated them and put them in order.
Now, how do they get the tire on the wheel after they heat it? How do they do it?
They'd wedge them on.
Mm-hmm. Now, do they put them in water after the tire was on the wheel or before?
After.
After.
See, they'd put the fellows all around,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'd lay that hot wheel on those fellows, and then they'd have iron tongs that they'd hook over the edge of that wheel and over the edge of that fellow's that wagon, and with those tongs they'd force them down over those fellows.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get them started on there, they kind of burn their way through, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did it take two people to handle the tire?
it took two to handle them.
Mm-hmm. What kind of bellows did your father have in the blacksmith shop?
They had an air compressor.
An air compressor? Did he have the old-fashioned hand-operated bellows? Did he ever have those?
Yeah.
Did you ever operate that?
Oh, yeah.
How long did it take to get the coals hot using the hand-operated bellows?
Just a very few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
They got hot right now.
What kind of fuel did you use in the furnace?
Coal.
Coal?
It was blacksmith coal.
Where'd you get the blacksmith coal? Where'd it come from?
Come down here in Oklahoma.
Remember what part?
Hartshorn.
Hartshorn, Oklahoma.
So you could bring it up here.
Remember the price of the coal? What you had?
Huh?
Remember the price of the coal? How much it cost?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But it cost about $8-10 a ton.
Mm-hmm. Ever doing any farming as a small boy?
Very little.
Mm-hmm.
I worked up the country on the farm.
How long did you help your father with the blacksmith shop?
Oh, for 8-9 years.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in the blacksmith shop until I was about 15 years old.
What'd you do then?
I worked in the office. I done office work.
What kind of office work?
Kept books,
Kept books?
payroll, all kinds of books.
Who'd you work for?
T.F. Lennon.
Who?
Lennon.
T.F. Lennon?
Lennon.
Mm-hmm. What kind of, was it a mining company?
It was a zinc and lead mine.
Mm-hmm. Where was the mine located?
Commerce. But I worked in all those mines out around Pitcher.
What, did you keep books for them?
I kept books. That's most all the kind of work I ever did around.
When did those mines open?
Well, 19 Commerce, Hattonville started along about 1908 or 9, or a little before that.
Could you tell me how World War I affected the mines?
Well, they were prosperous during
Mhm.
World War
So they increased the output of the lead and zinc during
I.
the
Yes,
war.
and the price was good.
Mm-hmm. What did you do on Armistice Day?
Huh?
What did you do on Armistice Day, the day the war ended?
The day on Armistice Day, everybody quit work, and they marched around all over the field.
Did you march with them?
Yeah.
How many were marching around together?
Oh, I expect it was 200.
Mm-hmm. How long did that celebration last?
All day.
Mm-hmm. You go back to work the next day?
Yeah. I had to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to lay off.
How were the mines operating in the 1920s?
1920.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see now. What was I working in 20? They were going pretty good.
Someone told me that there was a recession after World War I.
There was.
How bad was that recession?
Pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
The mines all shut down.
They did? Now, would you call that a depression or just a recession?
It's a recession.
Recession? How long did they stay closed?
Huh?
How long did the mines stay closed after World War One?
Not very long.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't very long until it was all running again.
Could you tell me, when you first started working in the mines, what was the average salary of the miner?
About $3.50 a day.
Did that increase during the war, World War One?
Some.
What about in the 20s? What was the salary of the miners?
It was better.
Mm-hmm.
It raised a little longer. When I first started working in the mine, I made $2 a day.
When did you start working in the mines? What year?
12, 13, 14.
Did you ever do any work in the mines?
Underground?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What kind of work did you do?
I drove a mule. First week I did.
What are the duties of a mule driver in the mine?
Well, they just have a mule barn down there in the ground, and they have, depending on how big a mine it is, they had about 10 or 12 mules there where I worked. Pretty good sized mine.
Did each mule driver take care of his own mule?
Yeah. He harnessed and fed his mules. But down there, they had a big bin, and they had oats and corn stuff in it all the time. The mules got just what they wanted.
How many cans could a mule pull?
Well, they'd have about 6 cans on ground cars, all buckled together, and they hook onto a string of those. You'll take them into the shaft.
How much does one can weigh when it's filled?
Oh, 1,500 pounds, 1,600, 2,000 up there. They had some big cars that they loaded. They held 2,500 pounds.
How far would the mule have to pull the cans from the face to the shaft?
Sometimes about a quarter of a mile.
Ever have any trouble in the mines with the mules or anything, any incidents happen?
Very little. Mules were well trained.
Ever have any close calls where a can ran over a mule?
No mules got hurt. We were pretty careful with the mules.
Ever have any cave-ins in the mine?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, they just slab fall. Might catch a man and understand. Not very often, once in a while.
Did you have any close calls?
No, I never had a close call in my life underground.
How long did you work in the mines?
Well, I started to work in the mines about 1912, and I worked in the mines from then on until I was 60 years old.
When did you start keeping books for the mine?
At Commerce,
Remember what year?
about 1912.
Okay, now were you keeping books while you were working in the mine also, underground?
Yeah.
Whenever you keep books, what are you keeping books on? What records are you keeping?
What's that?
In the books that you kept, what records were you keeping?
Complete set of records
Mm-hmm.
for time, for supplies, for ore sold,
Mm-hmm.
the price, the sample of the ore, and all that sort of thing.
What was the price of the ore in those days?
Around from $30 to $50
Is that a ton?
a ton. Yeah.
I lost my question.
Now, Wes's wife was on
You've been married 71 years.
Huh?
You've been married 71 years?
I worked in the mine about 75 years.
Wesley, how long have you been married?
We've been married 71 years. Ruby and I were married in 1970. And today's our wedding anniversary, the 10th of June.
Could you give just a brief explanation of the different jobs in the mine?
Different jobs.
Yeah, you were a mule driver. What were the other jobs in the mine?
Well, underground, they had machine men who ran rock drills. They had a machine man and what they called a dummy, he's a helper. And those dummies, they soon got to really get operated drill. I never did try to operate a drill over here.
Now, what is a dummy? What does he do?
He hauls steel back and forth from the shop to the heading where the man put the steel in the machine.
Now, when you say steel, what type of steel is this?
Well, they were steel from 2 foot long. We call them jumpers, where they start the hole with short steel.
Mm.
And they
It's kind of like a chisel or a...
Well, it's got a bit forward.
Is this what they start the hole in the face with?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who shot the mines?
Huh?
Who shot the mines?
They had powder men.
Mm-hmm. Did they ever have any trouble in shooting the mines?
Very little.
Mm-hmm.
Once in a while they'd have an accident, but not real.
Ever have any trouble with the air supply in the mines?
Very little.
Mm-hmm. How did they get fresh air into the mines?
Well, when they drill a shaft, they start out the shaft, and they'd have blowers up there on top, and then go down drill a hole, and they keep fresh air down there. But those mines, there were so many shafts out there, you know. They had an air current under the ground. They had good air most all the time.
Did most of the miners, did they live in the town of Miami or Commerce?
They lived in Commerce, Hattonville, Pitcher, Chardon, Lincolnville, Miami.
Did they have, I've heard them called camp towns. So like Pitcher and Commerce, were they camp towns?
Oh, they just have anything. They live in a tent.
Mm-hmm. I heard Galena, Kansas was pretty rough in the early days.
It wasn't any rougher than any others.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty rough place, so.
What made it rough?
Oh, those miners that drank and crowds around.
Where did most of the miners come from? What type of men were they?
Farmers,
Were most of them local people or people that came from other places to work in the mines?
they came from other camps.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these miners came from up around Joplin. Moab City, that's where we got our miners.
Mm-hmm.
Best miners came from Jasper County. They were experienced.
Mm-hmm. Someone said some miners came up around Idaho and Montana, in that area.
Well, a lot of these miners went out in Montana.
They did?
Places worked in milling mines. Then they came back here and worked.
How did the Depression of the 1930s affect the mines?
It just killed them.
Is that what closed the mines? The Depression?
They all shut down. There wasn't anything running. Or it got down to $20 a ton, 25.
Where were the main smelters for the mines?
Well, Fort Smith, Arkansas, has a good beef smoker. Hegler's Inc. has beef smoker in Illinois.
Any other smelters in Oklahoma around this area?
Bartlesville had a smelter. And Tulsa had a smelter.
Now, did the mines own the smelters, or were they owned by someone else?
They were owned by somebody else.
Could you tell me what your average day in the mine was like? From the time you'd get up in the morning, what was your average day?
Well, I'd get up and go to work about 7:30 in the morning. And work 8 hours at the mine. We'd go to work about 7:30, work till 4 o'clock.
How long were you a mule driver?
Oh, I didn't drive mules very long. About a year, I guess, 6 months.
When did they replace the mules with trucks?
Huh?
When did they replace the mules with trucks or tractors?
Oh, I'd say about 1915.
Mm-hmm. After the mules went out, what type of work did you do in the mines?
I was working on top.
You were working on top then?
I didn't work underground very long.
Mm-hmm. Were you working for the same company above ground as below ground? You said you started work for T.F. Lennon.
I worked for him on top most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Did all the mines close in the Depression of the 1930s?
Practically all.
Mm-hmm. What did you do in those years when the mines closed?
Well, I worked around the mine. I did repair on those mills,
Mm-hmm.
one thing and another. I worked for it all the time.
When did the mines finally close, all of them? What closed the mines?
Well, I know shut down so 1920. I went down the oil fields and worked down there for a while.
Which oil field?
I went to Tulsa, all down from there. I went down to,
You work in Glenpool? You worked around Glenpool?
No, I worked out in the field.
Mm-hmm. Did you work on a standard rig or a rotary rig?
I didn't work on a drill rig at all.
Oh, you didn't? What type of work did you do?
Just roustabout work.
What does a roustabout do?
Well, they'd help with those drill bits, sharpen those bits, one thing or another.
Now, did you use the rotary bit or the standard bit?
Standard.
Standard. How deep were the wells being drilled by the standard bit? Do you know?
About 400 feet.
Mm-hmm. When did they switch to the rotary bit? About what year?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Did they still have the wooden derricks, or did they go to the steel derricks?
Wooden.
Who built the derricks?
Just the men. I didn't work on them.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the main difference between the standard bit and the rotary bit?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about a rotary bit.
Mm-hmm. How long did you work in the oil field?
About 2 years.
Have any big gushers come in?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Field was already defined. They were doing lots of drilling, but I never saw a gusher in my life.
After the oil fields, did you come back to the mines?
Yeah.
What did you do during World War II?
World War II,
1941 through 45.
I worked in the mines all the time.
How did that war affect the mines?
It made time pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big demand for ore.
What year did you retire?
60.
1960?
Uh,
Was the mine still going then in 60?
some of them were.
When did the last mine close?
Well, I was working in Joplin when the last mine closed. I was working for the American Zinc Limited Smelling Company. They had an office in Joplin, and I had charge of their office.
Is there still ore in this area underground? Is there still ore underground? Is there still lead and zinc here?
Very little.
So most of it's, the mines just play out then?
Yeah.
Are you tired, Wes?
No.
You know, I went to the Nancy J mine in '64. Took a tour of it.
Yeah. And my grandfather went back to work for independence after he got a voice for, so he made his Social Security till about 68 or 69, and then last of mine around here.
Well, Mr. Bullock, I think we have a good interview. Anything else about your childhood you want to talk about, or anything about the early days?
No, nothing. I just grew up around the mine.
As a small boy, what games did you play?
Just him as any other boy. We played baseball.
Where'd you start the school?
I started the school up at Morrow Valley.
Where's that?
That's where I was born.
How big was the school?
It was, they had a nice schoolhouse.
How big was the schoolhouse?
Well, they had two big rooms, upstairs and downstairs.
How many students in each room?
I'd say they had 50 or 60.
Now, did you have separate grades, or did you go through readers in those years?
We had separate grades.
How many grades in one room?
They'd have about up to the 6th grade.
In one room? Was there just one teacher in that room?
Yeah.
How did that one teacher handle all 6 grades?
Oh, they didn't have any trouble.
When she was teaching your class, what were the other classes doing, the other grades?
They'd be teaching, they'd be different subjects.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a good interview. Thank you.
We're gonna go talk to Ruby.